Chapter 221, Hinata's New Jutsu. A while later, the group left the city's underground network and arrived on the surface. The moment Hinata and the two Narutos saw the city of Loran, their mouths gaped open in wonder. The whole city consisted of gigantic, interconnected stone towers and looked significantly grander than any city they had ever seen. Neither of the three had ever seen buildings this huge, so after seeing an entire city constructed only with such structures, they could only be dumbfounded by it. Seeing the trio's dumbfounded faces, Yuna started chuckling. She had seen a lot of impressive buildings in her previous life, so a bunch of towers that were barely 100 meters tall didn't impress her in the slightest. Hee, this is certainly different from how cities are usually built. It reminds me a little of a megacure, but the towers are made of stone instead of metal. After getting over their surprise, the group continued traveling and reached a vast plaza that was filled to the brim with people. From the looks of it, a massive festival was currently being held. After seeing what was going on, Yuna couldn't help but be surprised. Whistle that's pretty get up. Minato nodded in agreement when he heard Yuna's words. You have sharp senses. Yuna scoffed when she heard Minato's words but didn't comment any further. Naruto, meanwhile, tilted his head in confusion after he heard the conversation between Yuna and Minato. What do you mean? Isn't it just a festival? Hinata, Naruto, and Kakashi, who also didn't understand what Yuna meant either, started paying more attention to the festival, and moments later, all of them opened their eyes in surprise. All of these people are puppets. Yuna nodded her head when she heard Naruto's exclamation, while Naruto opened his eyes in surprise after he understood what Yuna meant. While everyone was watching the puppets moving around like they were celebrating something, happy calls of Your Majesty started echoing over the plaza. Moments later, a young woman with long, red hair appeared on one of the balconies of one of the towers and started waving to the crowd. Yuna chuckled with a wry smile on her face when she saw the woman happily waving towards the sea of puppets. I guess that is the queen you are supposed to protect, Minato. Minato didn't say anything and simply nodded his head with an expression that was mimicking Yuna's on his face. Indeed. I guess you can see why we thought that she was in danger. Yeah. She is either incredibly narcissistic to have a bunch of puppets applauding her, or someone wants her to believe that her people love her. Considering your current mission, I assume it's the latter. Just when Minato was about to confirm Yuna's guess, the person standing on the balcony stumbled forward, and the moment she reached the railing, it coincidentally broke apart. Yet again, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle. Well, that's an assassination attempt if I have ever seen one. Yuna vanished from where she stood without saying anything else, surprising those who didn't know of her speed. What no one noticed, however, was that someone else's presence vanished as well. Yuna appeared underneath the falling queen and was just about to catch her when a water bullet appeared out of nowhere and smacked into her. Although the shot was too weak to deal any damage to her, it was still strong enough to send her slightly off course, resulting in her missing the queen. Instead of being surprised, Yuna had a wry smile on her face. Well, that's just unreasonable. After Yuna finished speaking, Hinata appeared and caught the falling queen instead of Yuna. A small smile appeared on her face while she murmured something to herself. First wife style, denying the harem jutsu. On the way down, Hinata jumped from wall to wall so the person she caught wouldn't feel any discomfort from the landing, and moments later, the rest of the group landed next to her with weird expressions on their faces. The first to speak was Minato. I would like to ask you why you shot a water jutsu at Yuna. It was relatively weak, so it only pushed her away, but I would still like to know why. Hinata scoffed when she heard Minato's words before answering his question. Isn't that obvious? If Yuna were the one who caught her, she would, obviously, fall in love with her, and before I realize what is going on, Yuna's harem would have a new member. Constant vigilance. That's the only way for me to prevent Yuna's harem from getting too big. While Hinata's words dumbfounded everyone, Yuna theatrically flicked her hair away from her with a melancholic look on her face. It is not an easy fate to be as beautiful as Iron. No matter where I go, I have to be careful not to spark a war between nations due to my beauty. Everyone's dumbfounded gazes switched from Hinata to Yuna. Most of them expected Yuna to blush in shame after making her extravagant joke, but after seeing that she seemed to be genuinely sad about her cruel fate, all the people present, except for Hinata and Naruto, had the same thought at the same time. How can someone be this shameless? While Yuna's actions still dumbfounded everyone, the person Hinata just rescued started speaking with a meek voice. "Oh, I am not exactly sure what is going on, but could you let me down, please?" Hinata felt a little awkward when she realized that she has been carrying the queen of this country without paying any attention to her, so she quickly let her stand on her own. The moment her feet touched the ground, she sighed in relief while looking at Hinata with a grateful look on her face. "Thank you for saving me from that fall." Hinata casually waved her thanks away, like she didn't just push the first person that wanted to save her away with a water jutsu, and gave her a casual smile. "Please don't worry about it. My name is Hinata, by the way. I am called Sa, and I am the queen of the city of Loran. You don't seem to be from here. May I know why you are here?" Chapter 222, The Puppet Queen. Seeing the suspicion in Sa's eyes, Minato quickly started explaining why he was here, however. "Impossible. An Rakusen would never do that. He is a peace-loving man who has been supporting my mother for a long time and helped me with a lot of things after her death." Yuna shook her head when she heard Sa's words. "Peace-loving, huh? Isn't it rather weird for a so-called peace-loving man to secretly create a puppet army powered by the ley line's chakra?" Sa's eyes widened when she heard Yuna's words, and moments later, she started glaring at her. "You are lying." Yuna moved her right hand, resulting in a chakra string shooting towards a nearby crowd of people who were still partying even though their beloved queen fell from a balcony a minute ago. Moments later, one of the people flew towards Yuna. Sa's eyes widened when she saw this, and she immediately started yelling at Yuna. "What are you doing to one of my sight eyes ends?" Her angry yell quickly turned into a question when she saw the person Yuna pulled towards her. A puppet. A smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she moved the puppet with her chakra and started speaking with a changed voice. "Yay, long live Her Majesty. We are all really happy, and we definitely can't be used as wepo-vopes." When Yuna was about to say the word weapon, two blades accidentally popped out of the puppet's arms. Sa's eyes looked at the two blades in disbelief and staggered back a few steps. "Impossible. It can't be. I will go find an Rakusen and ask him personally. This is a misunderstanding, I am sure of it." Moments later, Sawa turned around and ran away, causing Yuna to shake her head, while Hinata had a concerned expression on her face. "Wasn't that too harsh, Yuna?" "That was totally too harsh. You made her cry, you know." After Naruto said his part, he turned around and started chasing after Sawa, while Yuna only shook her head. As the queen of this country, she has a responsibility she needs to carry. She neglected that responsibility, resulting in a maniac amassing a massive puppet army. She was tricked, and very little of this situation is her fault, but I don't see a point in coddling her either. After hearing the harsh truth, we can only hope that she won't repeat the mistake in the future. After a moment of pondering Yuna's words, Hinata nodded in understanding. At the same time, Minato looked at the departing Naruto and then looked at the adult Kakashi. "Could you help Naruto in protecting Sa, Kakashi?" Kakashi lazily looked up from his book before nodding his head. "Well, if Minato-sensei asks me to do something, I will, naturally, comply." Moments later, Kakashi vanished, leaving Yuna and Minato's groups behind. "Well, what do you plan to do, Yuna?" Yuna pondered Minato's question for a short moment before shrugging her shoulders. Honestly, we don't have much of a stake in this whole thing, but it would leave a sour taste in my mouth to let that maniac live. So, I would at least like to kill him before we return to our timeline. That made it sound like you could return to your timeline whenever you want. I wouldn't call it whenever I want, but I do more or less know what I have to do to get back. I have multiple Flying Thunder God Seal S in my timeline, so I only have to modify the jutsu to incorporate not just space travel but time travel as well. Although Minato wasn't sure why Yuna acted like her solution was something easily done, he decided not to bother with it. I see. Then thanks for the support, I guess. Haha, no big deal. Well, shall we go? We have a minister to assassinate. Minato cringed a little when he heard Yuna's words. Although they were really here to get rid of Anrakusen, the minister of Loran, the way Yuna said it sounded incredibly wrong. They were just about to begin searching for Anrakusen when another deafening applause was started on the nearby plaza. Yuna glanced at the plaza and could only smile wryly at what she saw. Wow, now things are getting seriously tasteless. What is that guy even thinking? A few moments ago, another person appeared on the balcony where Saa fell from a while ago. The person looked somewhat similar to Saa, but it became rather evident that it was just a puppet after giving it a proper glance. I really wonder what Anrakusen wants to achieve by having his puppets applauding another puppet. Minato glanced at the spectacle as well before shaking his head. Who knows? Maybe he wants to provoke us with this, so we reveal our position. Yuna shrugged her shoulders and quickly lost interest in whatever Anrakusen was planning. Our version of him was just a small fry, so I doubt that this version could plan anything that something sharp in his head couldn't solve. Well, he had about 6 years to play with the ley line, so I wouldn't dismiss him so quickly. When Kurama finished speaking, Yuna felt a strong chakra pulse, and moments later, many of the puppets in the plaza fell down due to losing their support from the ley line. At the same time, a more significant part of the group continued unhindered, indicating that the ley line got only partially sealed. Did you say anything, Kurama? Node. Yuna saw the slightly annoyed expression on Minato's face and chuckled a little. Well, seems like Protect Saa somehow became infiltrate the enemy's base and start the process of sealing the ley line. Minato sighed in annoyance before a severe expression appeared on his face. Well, let's hurry. Who knows in what kind of danger they are in? Minato was just about to jump away when Yuna grabbed his arm and stopped him. Before Minato could ask what Yuna was doing, a slight smirk appeared on Yuna's face. Hee, why would we walk when we can just teleport? Teleport? I didn't notice you giving either Kakashi or Naruto a sir. The books? A mischievous smile appeared on Yuna's face, while Minato's eyes widened in shock. Just how many layers of schemes did she put in such a seemingly trivial exchange? Incredible. Yet again, Minato was utterly wrong. Although Yuna really slipped a seal on the group, it was on Saa instead of Kakashi's books. Yuna sneaked it onto her while she was distracting everyone with a puppet play. Or, to be more precise, it was when the blades of the puppet accidentally popped out. Well, let's see if Anrakusen has anything worthwhile in store for us. Minato nodded his head, and moments later, the whole group teleported away. Chapter 223, Who are you and what have you done with Yuna? Moments later, Yuna and Minato's groups appeared next to Saa. As soon as they appeared, Naruto lifted his hand and blocked a fist that was about to hit him in the face. Please calm down, Kakashi-sensei. It's just us. Kakashi laughed awkwardly and quickly withdrew his fist. He was currently protecting Saa from a horde of puppets, so when he suddenly felt someone appear behind him, he immediately attacked. Sorry about that. Yeah, no worries. While Kakashi was trying to get rid of the awkward atmosphere, Yuna's eyes quickly scanned a room they were currently in to understand the situation. First, Yuna's gaze landed on Naruto, who was currently trapped inside a weird-looking puppet but was blasting Kurama's chakra, so it was only a question of time before he got out on his own. After confirming that Naruto was fine, Yuna scanned the puppets that were currently surrounding them, but she lost interest in them relatively fast since none of them were anything special. Lastly, her eyes landed on the only unknown person in the room. He looked a little like a fat version of Mukage she had seen previously and was currently so busy monologuing that he didn't even notice that more people appeared. Yuna assumed that this person was Mukage, or, as he calls himself now, Anrakusen. Hinata and Rakusen. Naruto, puppets. I'll help Naruto. Yes. Without exchanging any other words, Hinata coded herself in chakra, resulting in her presence becoming so thin that even the people standing next to her had trouble finding her location. After doing a silent leap, she completely vanished from everyone's perception. Naruto took a less subtle approach, as his whole body became coated with wind chakra. He didn't even bother using any techniques and simply rushed through the sea of puppets surrounding them, grinding everything his wind armor came in contact with into shreds. Meanwhile, Yuna ran through the chasm in the puppets that Naruto just created and arrived in front of the huge puppet that was trapping Naruto. Although she noticed that he would free himself soon, Yuna decided to help him out a little since there weren't enough threats around to keep herself busy anyway. Yuna coated her right hand in ice and smashed it into the puppet, resulting in it being broken to pieces and Naruto safely landing next to her, while giving the ice that was coating her hand a weird look. Anrakusen's eyes widened in surprise when he saw how easily Yuna destroyed his puppet, but before he could do anything else, Hinata appeared behind him and cut his head off. While Yuna, Hinata, and Naruto had lax expressions on their faces, the rest of the group was dumbfounded by how easily the trio mowed down all their enemies. The most shocked was, without a doubt, Naruto, who looked at Hinata in disbelief. It was rather apparent that this Hinata was very different from the one he knew when he first met her, but now the contrast became significantly more jarring. Rather than a shy young woman, she was a seasoned shinobi that didn't shy away from going for the kill. After seeing how used to combat Hinata was, a question appeared in his mind. He thought about asking the question for a while and then simply shrugged his shoulders while looking at Yuna. Just out of curiosity, what shinobi rank are you 3? He didn't think about it too much when he met the trio for the first time, but they were here on their own, which meant that one of them might have already become a jonin. Yuna gave Naruto a weird look for asking such a random question but answered it anyway. Naruto and Hinata are jonin, while I am an elite jonin. Naruto's jaw hit the ground when he heard what Yuna just said. Due to Naruto's current height, Naruto was pretty sure that he was older than him, but despite that, his other self and Hinata already reached the level of jonin, while Yuna even became an elite jonin. Even Naruto knew how abnormal it was for someone as young as Yuna to become an elite jonin. Elite jonin were the support pillars of every shinobi village, and the amount a village has was usually directly correlated with the strength of a village. The other people in the room were even more shocked than Naruto, simply because they knew exactly what it took to become an elite jonin. Just being strong was far from enough to reach that rank. Personal combat strength, auxiliary skills like infiltration and gathering information, reliability, intelligence, and the trust the village had in you. All of these factors and more were important if someone wanted to become an elite jonin, and for Yuna to fulfill all of the necessary criteria at such a young age was beyond abnormal. If Yuna told them that she wasn't even aiming for the promotion, they would probably cough out some blood in anger. She was simply doing some missions that she deemed interesting, and Tsunade simply promoted her one day. While the mood in the room was turning weird, Yuna noticed some movement behind her, and moments later, she widened her eyes in surprise while pushing Naruto out of the way. Asterisk boom asterisk. The hand of the puppet she had destroyed a short while ago started moving on its own and crashed onto Yuna. Ha ha ha, you didn't really think you could kill me this easily, did you? I am invincible, and my power is endless. The smaller puppets Naruto previously destroyed started flying towards Enrikusen's corpse, while the bigger one Yuna destroyed did the same except for the hand that landed on Yuna. All the parts piled up, forming a small mountain, and moments later, a giant puppet that looked like a massive beetle with a bizarre human-like head burst out. "And now, all of you will die." Seeing that Yuna was still trapped under the puppet's hand and that the hand wouldn't budge, Naruto started panicking. "Quickly, someone help me. Yuna is still trapped under here, you know." Naruto nodded his head and appeared next to Naruto, but instead of helping him move the hand, he picked him up and jumped away. "Hey! What are you doing? Isn't she your sister? Don't you want to help her, you know?" Naruto chuckled a little when he heard Naruto's outburst. "Calm down, there is no way something this insignificant could harm her. As for why I am carrying you away, I'm getting you out of the danger zone." "Danger zone? Asterisk boom asterisk." The hand that was trapping Yuna was shredded to pieces by massive icicles that rose from the ground while overbearing battle intent flooded the room, causing everyone who didn't know Yuna to stiffen. Moments later, Yuna walked out of her newly created icicle field with a face-splitting grin on her face. After seeing Yuna's facial expression, Naruto could only shake his head in pity. Calling yourself invincible in front of Nasan, not a good idea. Meanwhile, Yuna was looking at Enrikusen's new form like a child, which found itself in front of an especially tasty trait. Hee, invincible and with endless power, eh? Let me put that to the test. Seems like I was wrong, Kurama. I should be able to get some fun out of this. Holy shit. Did you just admit to being wrong? Who are you and what have you done with Yuna? Now you are just being unreasonable. I'm sure that this wasn't the first time, maybe, possibly. You sure about that? No. Chapter 224, Three-Stage Boss Fight. Yuna vanished from where she stood and, in the next moment, smashed an ice-coated fist into the giant puppet that Enrikusen had turned into. He smacked into a wall with a massive dent in his body where Yuna's fist previously landed and was immediately skewered by multiple icicles. Hee, that can't be all, can it? That can't even be counted as a full thrust. You can't satisfy me if you go limp this quickly. Hinata and Naruto facepalmed when they heard Yuna's words, while the other people were giving her weird looks. Did she just... Before Minato could finish his sentence, a wry smile appeared on Naruto's face, and he answered what Minato was about to ask. Yes, Nasen tends to make sexual innuendos when she is fighting. At first, I thought she does it to agitate her opponents so they get angry and mess up, but by now I'm pretty sure that she simply does it because she enjoys getting other people mad. Although this does have the side effect of people getting angry and making mistakes, it is not the primary goal. Ha, what happened to having unlimited power? You can't get it up anymore? Minato glanced at Yuna and wasn't sure what he was supposed to do with what he saw. A massive hammer entirely made out of ice had appeared in Yuna's hands, and she was repeatedly smacking it into Enrikusen's body like she was a demolition worker. His body was constantly regenerating, but it was rather apparent that the regeneration was slowing down. Since everything seemed to be under control and Yuna appeared to be having fun, Minato decided not to bother her and decided to ask Naruto another question instead. I have been wondering about this for a while now, but why can she use ice style? Naruto shook his head when he heard Minato's question. I am not really sure myself. I once asked Haku, my girlfriend, who can use ice style as well, about Nasan's ice, and she told me that Yuna's ice is fundamentally different from hers. Hinata nodded her head at Naruto's words and decided to provide a little more details. Indeed, Haku can use her ice due to her bloodline, but Yuna can use it due to her understanding of ice. While most people present had question marks over their heads when they heard Hinata's words, a thoughtful look appeared on Minato's face. Fundamentally different understanding of ice isn't that impossible. Maybe this is something only Yuna can do. Now that I think about it, wasn't there something else that should be impossible? Why didn't Hinata's water jutsu get absorbed completely when I first met her? Is it the same principle? Can I do something like that as well? While Minato was sinking into deep contemplation, Yuna was finished with Anrakusen. His puppet body stopped regenerating and was turned into a mountain of broken puppet parts. Yuna wiped away the non-existent sweat on her forehead while a satisfied expression appeared on her face. Phew, that was a rather lovely session. He kept it up much longer than I expected him to. A wry smile appeared on everyone's faces when Yuna made yet another sexual innuendo, but before they could say anything about it, the floor started trembling. Boom. The mountain of smashed puppet parts was hit by a lightning strike that originated from the city's highest tower with a loud noise. Moments later, the pieces started melting, and just like previously, they flew into each other. However, this time, even the surrounding buildings began melting similarly, resulting in a genuinely gigantic mass of materials forming. Yuna licked her lips in excitement when she saw what was happening in front of her. She briefly glanced at Naruto and Hinata and their Esmed in the process. The trio nodded at each other, and moments later, they huddled together while their right hands moved. Hinata's hand formed a fist, but her index and middle finger were stretched out, resulting in it looking like a scissor. Naruto's hand did the same as Hinata's, but Yuna's hand was clenched into a fist. Pouts appeared on the faces of Hinata and Naruto, while Yuna did a fist pump. Such a pity. Wow, I have to stay back and play cough. I mean, hold back this monstrous puppet. You have to protect the newbie people while sealing the ley line that powers the puppet. I'm so jealous. Hinata and Naruto both glared at Yuna but didn't comment on what she just said. Meanwhile, Minato had a worried expression on his face when he realized that Yuna wanted to fight such a dangerous enemy alone. Is that really fine? I know that you are powerful, but whatever will come out of that will be incredibly dangerous. A smirk appeared on Yuna's face when she heard Minato's worried words, and moments later, massive amounts of blue, red, and white chakra started flooding out of her, resulting in Minato's eyes widening in shock. The chakra turned into a cloak that engulfed Yuna and formed 5 chakra tails on her back. You're a Jinchuriki. Yep. While everyone was shocked by that revelation, Naruto had a slightly different problem. F5 tails. How can you control that? I can't even control 4, you know. Yuna shrugged her shoulders at Naruto's words. You should spend some time talking with the grumpy fox. You will have to spend the rest of your life together with him, after all. What? He attacked Konoha. There is no way I want to talk to him, you know. If that is what you think, then there is nothing I can do about it, but never forget that a story always has more than one side. Before Naruto could ask more questions, Anrakusen broke out of his form with a loud roar, revealing a gigantic centipede-like puppet with a human-like upper body on one end of its form. Ha, I told you I am invincible. Now you will suffer for what you did to me. Yuna smirked when she saw Anrakusen's current form and pointed the index finger of her right hand at him. I wasn't expecting this boss fight to have 3 stages. Let's see if you can satisfy me with that huge long thing. Yuna heard multiple synchronized facepalms behind her but decided to ignore them. Chakra started rapidly gathering and condensing at the tip of her finger and formed a small black and blue sphere. Feeling the pressure the sphere was emitting, the surrounding people's faces paled, while Hinata and Naruto had excitement written all over their faces. Who wouldn't want to see something highly explosive shooting into a gigantic puppet? I suggest you prepare yourself. Things are about to get dangerous. Ice style, peerless mini Bijadama of eternal ice. Although most people's eyebrows twitched when they heard another weird technique name, while Minato nodded in approval, everyone took some distance from Yuna and Anrakusen. They prepared themselves to leave the moment the battle really started so that they could seal away the ley line while Anrakusen was distracted. Seeing the small condensed ball of chakra flying at him, and Rakusen laughed out loud while the puppet's mouth opened to use its chakra absorption on Yuna's attack. Ha ha ha, something like that won't work on me. Yuna's technique entered the puppet's mouth without even a mode of chakra being absorbed from it and exploded inside the puppet. A huge explosion took place, and moments later, a massive snow and ice storm engulfed the whole puppet. The puppet's body was frozen while simultaneously being shredded to pieces by the rampaging fragments of ice. He actually tried to absorb my technique, ha! As if anything that involves my ice could be absorbed so easily. Since it exploded inside the puppet's body, the damage is much bigger than I anticipated it to be, but from what I have seen so far, I don't think this will be enough. And Rakusen might have heard Yuna's words, as moments later, enormous amounts of chakra started flooding the puppet's body, resulting in it regenerating faster than the ice could damage it. A huge smile appeared on Yuna's face when she saw the puppet slowly stepping out of the rampaging snowstorm. Yep, this will be fun, Tilda. Chapter 225, Teaching Manners. Naruto gaped when he saw the after effects of Yuna's technique. It was somewhat similar to his Arazen Shuriken, but much more extensive in scale. Instead of being pierced by thousands of tiny wind needles, her opponent was bombarded by hundreds of high-speed ice spikes. All in all, Naruto judged that the destructive power of the two jutsu was similar, with Yuna's being bigger in scale and his having more destructive power. The problem was that he needed two clones to create it, was required to use it in close combat, and even injured his hand by using it. On the other hand, Yuna made her attack casually with one finger and even shot it at her enemy while staying completely unharmed. There obviously was a massive gap in usability between the two jutsu. Could I do the same if I could control five tails? Truth be told, I don't think I could, but it would still increase my strength. The stronger I am, the easier it would be to protect the people close to me should I really try talking with the fox. How weird, although that is clearly my chakra, the color and feeling are somewhat off. I wonder why it is like that. Huh, who said that? Wait, was that the damn fox? The people around Naruto were giving him weird looks when they heard his first question. After all, no one had spoken. After his second question, however, they looked at him with surprise. Oh? Did you hear what I just said, brat? Of course I heard you. And who are you calling a brat, damn fox? Seeing the current situation, Naruto pondered for a moment and started speaking. I think I know what is going on. Since Nasan has the in part of Kara *** the Kyuubi's chakra, and you have, I presume, the Yun part, they are resonating with each other, resulting in the seal temporarily getting breached. It's good that due to certain circumstances, the chakra of the yin half inside Nasan changed, otherwise you might actually lose control of the seal and go on a rampage. Although Naruto wasn't sure about the exact meaning of yin half and yun half, he nonetheless nodded his head in understanding. The Kurama inside Naruto, meanwhile, was utterly dumbfounded by what he just heard. That damn brat was about to use my real name. Who told him that? Did I do it? Impossible. The Kurama within Naruto, on the other hand, was slightly amused by what just happened. Oh my, what a coincidence. You almost let my real name slip at a moment where the other me would definitely hear it. Now he will wonder how you knew about it and will come to the realization that it was me who told you, easing him into the idea of getting closer to Naruto. I know, right? What a crazy coincidence. While Yuna was pelting Rakusen with ice projectiles, the rest of the group started moving towards the highest tower in the city to seal away the ley line and stop Rakusen. However, Rakusen realized that there was no point in fighting Yuna and that he should instead focus on the other group that was trying to seal away the ley line. So, without paying any attention to Yuna, he turned around and his giant puppet body started following the previously departed group, despite still being shot at with ice projectiles. Yuna was, naturally, not happy about being ignored. What the hell, puppet freak? Come back here and face me like the ugly abomination you are. Get lost, you damn monster, I don't have time for you. Who are you calling a monster? Do you want me to create a nice mirror for you to take a look at your current form? And Rakusen ignored Yuna's words and continued moving instead. Yuna scowled in annoyance, and moments later, a huge ice hammer formed in her hand. Very well, seems like I have to teach you some manners. Meanwhile, the other group was on their way down the tower. The tower was primarily hollow and only had one colossal pipe that went from the bottom of the tower to the top and stairs at the wall of the building. There was a lot of free space in the middle of the tower, which Shinobi could use to travel down vertically. Still, on their way here, Quainsawa insisted on taking a few civilians which she and Naruto previously freed with her, so they couldn't use the Shinobi solution and had to use the stairs instead. Apparently, there was a safe room somewhere, and Sawa wanted the civilians to hide in there. Although Minato wasn't happy about the additional burden, Konoha's shinobi have the image of not hurting civilians, and he would rather not be the one to destroy that image. Additionally, he wasn't sure whether leaving Yuna behind on her own was really a good idea. She might be a Jinchuriki, but that didn't mean that she was invincible. Naruto saw the distress in Minato's eyes and couldn't help but chuckle. You were worried about Nei-san, huh? Minato nodded his head and frowned a little when he saw how easygoing Naruto's attitude was. You aren't. What makes you think that she won't be overwhelmed by an enemy of that size and an endless supply of chakra? Hee, of course, I'm not worried. If the situation was actually dangerous, she would have never allowed Rakusen to transform in the first place. Nei-san enjoys fighting, but that doesn't mean that she would risk throwing her life away for a battle that isn't even important to her. Minato heard Naruto's words and after contemplating them for a moment, nodded his head in acknowledgement. Although he was still a little worried about Yuna, Naruto's words did calm him down a little. Moments later, a loud explosion could be heard, followed by an angry scream and loud laughter. Before the group could understand the situation, Rakusen's giant puppet body came falling from above and sailed straight past the group. Most of Rakusen's legs were smashed apart, and his whole body was tied up in blue, ice-like chains. A young woman stood on his head with a giant hammer in her hand. 5 chains that were coiled around the puppet's body were coming out of her back, and she was repeatedly smacking the hammer into the face of the puppet. Damn it, leave me alone, you damn monster. Ha ha ha, this will teach you not to ignore me, puppet freak. When Minato looked at him accusingly, Naruto couldn't help but feel a little awkward. I guess I should have also mentioned that Nei-san once defeated the Sanbi in a one-on-one match, so something at Rakusen's level doesn't really amount to much for her. Chapter 227, Through Time and Space. Moments later, Rakusen's puppet body smashed into the ground while Yuna safely landed a few meters away from him. Well, wasn't that a nice civil discussion about proper manners? Rakusen stood up with a loud groan as the power of the ley line yet again repaired his puppet lens. Why, you damn monster? What the hell are you? After hearing Rakusen's question, she chuckled and licked her lips like she had just tasted something delicious. One of my favorite tastes. The fear of a once arrogant opponent. Delicious tilde. Rakusen instinctively shrunk back when he saw Yuna's facial expression. He realized that he indeed felt fear just now, but moments later, his anger exploded. Nonsense. I fear nothing. I am invincible. While Yuna chuckled in amusement due to Rakusen's delusions, the mouth of the puppet opened and massive amounts of chakra started gathering in it. Die, monster. Ley line, great dragon's fire breath. Blue flames shot out of the puppet's mouth and covered the whole area. Yuna snorted in disdain when she heard the name of Rakusen's technique. You call that a dragon breath? I would call it a lizard fart at best. An ice wall rose in front of Yuna and blocked the fire that was heading in her direction. Yuna wanted to mock him some more, but she felt something in the atmosphere shift moments later. Oh, seems like they succeeded in sealing the ley line. Guess I should finish this as well, huh? When Anrakusen heard Yuna's claim, he immediately realized that he had messed up. Since Yuna was constantly insulting and mocking him, all of his anger was focused on her, and he completely forgot about the second team that wanted to seal the ley line. Now that his endless chakra supply was gone, his confidence immediately crumbled into dust. No, this can't be. I am supposed to be invincible. How did this happen? Yuna scoffed at Anrakusen's words and lifted a colossal ice sword that had just formed with both of her hands. Because your arrogance and anger blinded you. You are not the first and definitely not the last person who will die due to that. He panicked even more when Yuna told him that he would die, but she slashed down her sword before he could do anything about it. Ice sword combination style, one slash begets 1,000 cuts. Yuna decided to finish this with a big move, and just like the first time she used this technique, a massive ice slash was created and flew at Anrakusen. It was rapidly splitting apart and turned into a wall of thousands of tiny ice slashes that were heading for him. Unlike Obida, who was the first victim of this technique, Anrakusen simply froze up in fear when he saw Yuna's deadly attack. Yuna's attack washed over Anrakusen's gigantic puppet body and cut it into thousands of pieces. Now that he no longer had the ley line to sustain his form, this attack killed him instantly. Truth be told, Yuna believed that this technique would have killed him anyway, but she decided not to risk it since she wasn't entirely sure about that. After making sure that Anrakusen was really dead, Yuna nodded her head in satisfaction and teleported to Hinata, who had one of Yuna's seals on her. An altar in the middle of a vast hall served as the main access point to the ley line. Multiple people surrounded the altar, and one person was kneeling on top of it while stabbing a kunai into the altar. The man on the altar, Minato, sighed in relief when the sealing process ended without any complications. Good, now we just have to get rid of Anrakusen, and this mess should be of. Before he could finish speaking, Yuna appeared next to Hinata. Yo. I'm done. Minato was, naturally, startled by Yuna suddenly appearing but was even more surprised by her words. Done? What do you mean by you are done? Well, just what I just said. I'm done with Anrakusen. When the ley line stopped supporting him, I used a big move and turned him into confetti. See confetti? Yuna chuckled a little when she saw everybody's dumbfounded face and pointed at Naruto and the adult Kakashi. See, these two are already fading away. The reason they were here was the sealing formula that Anrakusen absorbed. Now that it is gone, they are no longer anchored in this timeline and are sent back to their own. Unfortunately, it won't be this easy for my group since we came here due to slightly different reasons. After seeing that Naruto and Kakashi were indeed fading away, Minato nodded in understanding, despite still being somewhat doubtful that Yuna managed to deal the finishing blow pretty much the moment the ley line was sealed. A short while later, everybody finished their goodbyes and Naruto and Kakashi had vanished entirely. Minato's gaze landed on Yuna as he started speaking. Well, what do you plan to do now? Guess I will start creating the seal that will return us to where we came from. Naruto, help me create this, please. Ine-san, I have no clue how time travel works. That's fine, I will be responsible for that part. Without saying another word, Yuna took out a huge scroll, unfolded it, and started drawing seals on it. Although Naruto was a little skeptical about whether he could really help with this, after watching Yuna for a short moment, his eyes shone in understanding, and he started working as well. Meanwhile, Minato could only watch in fascination at the duo working. He had reached a very high level in sealing, so he could, to some degree, understand what Yuna and Naruto were doing. Although the foundation of the seal was the Flying Thunder God seal, Yuna and Naruto were currently creating something with significantly more complexity. It was like creating a fourth-dimensional drawing on the foundation of a three-dimensional one. While Naruto was building the foundation, Yuna was responsible for adding another dimension, and about half an hour later, the duo created an incredibly intricate ceiling arrangement. Impressive. That was the only word that left Minado's mouth when the two were done with their work. Yuna nodded in acknowledgement to Minado's praise, while Naruto had a happy smile on his face. Guess it is time for us to leave as well. After he heard Yuna's words, a tinge of regret briefly flashed through Minado's eyes. Most people probably wouldn't notice it, but Yuna wasn't most people. A smirk that sent shivers through Minado's spine appeared on Yuna's face as she started walking towards Minado. Now, no reason to hold back. 3 books appeared in Yuna's hands, which she quickly held out for Minado to grab. Here you go. I noticed you wanted some copies as well when I gave them to Kakashi. Yet another shiver of terror went through Minado as his eyes quickly landed on Kakashi, who was still completely immersed in the book he was holding. Considering everything that had happened so far, it was an impressive feat, and Minado sighed in relief that Kakashi was still distracted. With minuscule movement, he grabbed the 3 books and made them disappear instantly. He glanced at the other 2 people in his team and received 2 small nods. A small smile graced Minado's face before quickly disappearing again. Cough as expected of my daughter. Minado noticed that Hinata and Naruto's gazes became a little colder when he accepted Yuna's gift, but there was nothing he could do about that anyway, so he didn't bother to begin with. Moments later, the goodbyes were done, and the trio stepped onto the freshly created seal. The seal started glowing, and just before the light completely engulfed the trio, a slight smirk appeared on Yuna's face that gave Minado a rather bad feeling. Hee, I hope you fall like strawberries. Minado tilted his head in confusion when he heard Yuna's remark. What do you mean? ****4. 4 cakes smacked into the faces of Minado and his teammates. Minado had no idea what just happened, but considering the laughter he heard coming from the trio, he didn't think that this was the first time Yuna did something like that. Meanwhile, Kakashi and Naruto were carefully climbing out of the ruins of Loran, and moments later, Sakura and Sai came running towards them. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto, what happened to you two? Kakashi couldn't help but chuckle a little when he heard Sakura's question. A lot happened, but we can discuss that later. For now, I have something important to do. Without giving Sakura a chance to ask more questions, a small book appeared in Kakashi's hand, and he started reading. Although Sakura noticed that Kakashi seemed to have acquired a new book somehow, she still clenched her fist in anger when Kakashi blatantly started reading his porn in front of her. She was just about to lash out at Kakashi when the book started glowing. Well, that can't be go. ***4. Before Kakashi could finish his statement, 4 cakes appeared out of nowhere and hit Kakashi, Naruto, Sakura, and Sai in the face. After wiping the cake out of his face and confirming that his book is undamaged, Kakashi shook his head in disbelief. He couldn't even begin to fathom how Yuna pulled this stunt off. Chapter 228, Neja Hyuga. The next Chunin exams were right around the corner, and Team 9 was currently walking towards the Uzumaki compound for some sparring matches. If the exams were to be held in Konoha, the teams wouldn't want to reveal their techniques to each other. However, since this time's exams were held in the Land of Wind, Konoha's teams were supposed to present a united front, so they at least had to know each other's combat styles before the exams started. While Lee and Guy had excitement written all over their faces, Tenten had a neutral smile on her face. Neji was naturally part of this group as well, but his face showed that he had no idea how to deal with the current situation. Or, to be more precise, he had no idea how to face Hinata. Neji was not stupid. Arrogant and misguided. Yes. Stupid. No. After his beatdown by Hinata, he spent a lot of time thinking about the current situation of the Hyuga clan. Additionally, he kept observing the Hyuga clan and saw a lot of things he didn't previously notice. He saw the ridiculous arrogance of the main family. The poor treatment of the branch families, who were occasionally even treated as glorified servants. He saw how barely anyone put any effort into training. And, most importantly, he noticed that the Hyuga clan had very few people who could be considered elite shinobi. Didn't they have the strongest taijutsu style, the gentle fist style? What about the strongest ocular power, the Byakudan? Shouldn't they have more jonins in their ranks if that were the case? Another thing that irked Neja was that nearly every elder of the clan dismissed Hinata's victory over him as a fluke or pure luck. Neja felt that no matter how jaded someone was, claiming that Hinata won due to luck should be impossible, but apparently he was wrong about that. Additionally, he spent quite a bit of time thinking about Hinata's so-called guide, and he could certainly see her point. Did anything in the Hyuga clan's training regime change after Hinata pointed out so many flaws? No, nothing changed. Neji couldn't understand why nobody bothered to change anything in their combat style after its flaws were publicly displayed. He couldn't be the only one who understood that that was a dangerous situation, right? No, in fact, there was another person who realized that. Hisoka Hyuga. After she became Yuna's genin, Neji started paying more attention to her, and by now, he was certain that there was something different about her. He couldn't really put his finger on it, but he felt like the way she held herself started changing over time. He was also pretty sure that none of the clan elders noticed, probably because most of them were dismissive and indifferent to her, but since he had been paying closer attention to her, he noticed some changes. Out of curiosity, he challenged her to a spar. After a surprisingly hard fight, in which she only used the standard gentle fist style, he could win against her. Despite feeling that there was something off about how Hisoka fought, Neja had no clue what it was. Afterwards, she gave him a respectful bow and said, as expected of the main family, and although her facial expression was unmoving and she sounded respectful, Neja felt like her words were dripping with sarcasm and disdain. Shortly after, the people watching the fight surrounded him to praise him for his victory, which was when he realized what actually happened. In this sparring match, it wasn't that Hisoka couldn't beat him, but that she shouldn't beat him. Without thinking about it too deeply, Neja challenged her in a public place, which resulted in a lot of spectators. Some random branch member obviously shouldn't defeat the heir of the main family publicly. This was when Neja realized that she was very likely holding back her strength, while he also realized that the words, as expected of the main family, were very likely followed by something along the lines of, "They are unwilling to have a fair match," in Hisoka's head. Neja felt like he wronged her with that fight, but since Hisoka would be participating in the Chunin exams as well, he would have a chance to have a proper battle with her today, where she wouldn't have to hold back. Unlike his inevitably awkward meeting with Hinata, he was looking forward to fighting Hisoka. A few minutes of walking later, Team 9 reached the Uzumaki compound. Unlike the Hyuga compound, which felt dignified and oppressive, the colorful Uzumaki compound felt inviting and radiated friendliness. There was a constant trickle of civilians and shinobi alike who went in and out of the Uzumaki clan. Like most Hyuga, Neja had few chances to explore the village, so this was actually the first time he saw the Uzumaki compound. He couldn't help but be dumbfounded when he saw the heavy traffic at the entrance of the Uzumaki clan. Usually, clans want as few outsiders as possible inside their compound, but that didn't seem to apply to the Uzumaki clan. How in the world do they ensure that no spies sneak in? From what I can see, the gate guards are barely stopping any people. There is no way they can identify all the people that are going in unchecked by their faces alone. Seeing the confusion on Neja's face, Guy chuckled a little and started speaking. "Hidi, I assume you're wondering how the Uzumaki clan managed to keep their security in check, huh?" Although Neja felt a little annoyed that he allowed his thoughts to appear on his face, which a Hyuga shouldn't do, he still nodded his head in confirmation. Guy pulled out a small red token and showed it to Neja. That is because the Uzumaki clan has a compound-spanning, seal-based security system. They hand out these tokens, and the token's color shows which areas inside the compound you have access to. If you go somewhere inside the compound where you aren't supposed to go, the token will warn you first, and if you don't comply, the compound's security system will activate and capture you. As for getting in without a token, I heard 2 S-rank shinobi tried and failed to do so. Neji was shocked when he heard Guy's explanation about how the Uzumaki's security system worked. Not only was that security system incredibly useful to keep spies out, it significantly reduced the necessary amount of guards as well. When he heard that it was strong enough to repel 2 S-rank shinobi, however, he felt like he was hit by lightning. After all, the Hyuga clan currently didn't even have a single S-rank shinobi. That meant that even if the whole Hyuga clan mobilized and came here to attack the Uzumaki compound, they probably wouldn't even manage to crack open the security system. The Hyuga clan would have to desperately fight against the defense system while the Uzumaki clan members could lazily stay inside their compound and watch the show. That was beyond ridiculous. Only now did Neji realize how outrageous the story about the destruction of the Uzumaki clan in the previous war truly was. It took the power of 3 great villages and catastrophic losses to take out a single clan. Could today's Hyuga clan endure the assault of even a single great village? He very much doubted that. Moments later, one of the guards in front of the gate approached the group with a friendly smile on his face. "Welcome to the Uzumaki compound. Are you here to re-challenge Unisama, Lee?" A fire ignited in Lee's eyes before quickly being extinguished. "Actually, we are here to prepare for the Chunin exams, so I don't think I will get a chance to fight Una today." "Haha, too bad then, but knowing Unisama's personality, won't she squeeze in a match against you anyway?" The fire in Lee's eyes reignited when he heard that while he eagerly nodded his head. "Yosh, my flames of youth will burn especially bright today." "Ha ha ha, as energetic as ever, aren't we? Anyway, please enter, and I hope you enjoy your time in the Uzumaki compound." As the guard finished speaking, he tossed a small token towards Neji, which he quickly caught. Although he had seen Guy's token, he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do with it. Before he could ask, Guy answered his question. "Just put some chakra into it, and it will change color while being bound to you." Neji nodded his head and did as he was told, and moments later, the token turned blue, which surprised the other 3 people in Neji's team. "Oh? I wasn't expecting it to turn blue. Considering what happened previously, I wasn't expecting the 3rd highest level to pop out. It's the same I got when I first came here." As Tenten said, she pulled out a red token, the 2nd highest level, which she was given a few weeks ago. When Neji understood the situation, he was a little surprised as well. He was confident that Hinata held a grudge against him, and due to her relationship with Yuna, it wouldn't be surprising if the whole Uzumaki clan was hostile to him, but that didn't seem to be the case. The group entered the compound, and Neji could only shake his head in pity at what he saw. Friendly smiles, a good mood, and a feeling of prosperity could be felt wherever he looked. The pity he felt was towards the Hyuga clan, whose atmosphere was the exact opposite of the Uzumaki clan's. It was a cold, dreary, and oppressive atmosphere. A few minutes of walking later, they reached a massive training ground that caused Neji to gape in surprise. For some reason, this training ground felt more extensive than the whole Hyuga compound, which, considering the total size of the previous Senju compound, should be impossible. This kind of training ground should not fit inside the walls of the Uzumaki compound. Yet again, Guy chuckled at Neji's expression, and yet again, Neji scowled at showing an expression on his face. Today, his trademark Hyuga stoic face was seriously put to the test. Don't ask me how exactly this works, but the Uzumaki clan used seals to expand the space of this training ground to make it bigger. Guess it is a little like storage scrolls but on a much grander scale. Yet again, Neji's chin hit the ground. Wouldn't that mean that the Uzumaki compound is significantly bigger than it looks? How many of these space-expanding seals do they have in their compound? No, even more important, what is the original size of this training ground? While Neji was trying to wrap his head around all the ridiculous things he has seen so far, Team 9 reached their destination, the middle of the training ground where Yuna, Hatane, and a few other people were already waiting for them. The moment Neji saw Yuna, he couldn't help but shiver a little. She was 1 year younger than him, and despite that, she was already renowned throughout the shinobi world as the S-rank shinobi Bijou Slayer. Previously, he was happy whenever someone praised him as a genius. But, after hearing about what Yuna had achieved so far, it felt like someone was slapping him in the face every time they called him a genius nowadays. What kind of genius was he when someone younger than him already reached the rank of elite jonin while he was still a genin? Chapter 229, A Minor Oversight. A few more months passed, and Yuna was currently standing on one of the Uzumaki clan's training grounds and was waiting for everyone to arrive. It was time for the Chunin exams, and Yuna, naturally, signed her team up for it. Although it couldn't be guaranteed that all 3 of them would pass, all 3 of them at least had the necessary strength to succeed. This time, the exams were a joint exercise between Konohagakure and Sunigakure, so the first part of the exams would be held in Konoha, while the second would be held in Suna. Additionally, there will be participants from Ame-, Kusa-, Taki, and even Kiridakure. Although Kuri just went through a civil war, since they barely had any losses and started an alliance with Konoha directly after, they decided to send in a team symbolically. Honestly, Yuna pitied the team from Kuri a little. Their village's specialty is water style, and the second round will literally be held inside a desert. Either my sent a team she wanted to get rid of or a team with a unique specialization. A little later, the first team arrived. It was Kurenai and her 3 genin, Choji, Shino, and Kiba. Since Hinata, Ino, and Shikamaru are no longer genin, Choji will join Kurenai's team to make it a 3-person squad again. When Kurenai arrived, she was about to bow towards Yuna, but Yuna quickly lifted her hand to stop her action. Please don't bother with formalities and just call me Yuna, Kurenai. Kurenai sighed in relief when she heard Yuna's words. As the head of a huge clan and an elite jonin, Yuna had a significantly higher position than Kurenai, so using polite speech wouldn't be weird. Despite that, Kurenai felt rather uncomfortable referring someone at the same age as her genin respectfully. She was more than happy that Yuna was okay with using casual speech. All right, Yuna. I'm looking forward to working with you. Yuna nodded in acknowledgement and put her focus on the other group that just arrived. Seems like Guy's team just arrived, as well. I wonder how he will react to not being the first team to ranged. Dan. We weren't first. As punishment, I will run 1,000 rounds around the training ground on my hands. Yeah, as expected. Kurenai couldn't help but chuckle when she saw that Yuna had already gotten used to Guy's antics. Meanwhile, Yuna was eyeing Neji with some interest. Hisoka told her that Neji would redeem himself in the timeline she knew, but since the circumstances were a little different this time, Yuna wondered if it would happen anyway. Although she wasn't sure if Neji's attitude completely changed, she at least noticed that he was holding himself differently now. He let go of most of his arrogance, and he doesn't appear to be hostile to the Uzumaki clan either. Although I am not sure what he went through over the last year, it certainly is an improvement. Yuna also noticed the battle intently was directing at her and couldn't help but smirk a little. Lee has been visiting the Uzumaki compound rather frequently and has fought dozens of sparring matches not only against Yuna but Hinata and Naruto as well. Strictly speaking, today they weren't supposed to have a match, but since he is here anyway, Yuna decided that she might as well have a little fun and fight Lee again. Yuna never really spent much time with other genin teens, so she noticed a rather interesting phenomenon right now. I see, as more and more teens trickled in, the jonin and genin start to mingle with people of their respective ranks. While the jonin have a relatively relaxed atmosphere between each other, the genin are highly competitive. I guess since jonin is the end of the road for almost everyone, there really isn't much of a point in continuing to compete with each other. The genin, on the other hand, are still at the start of their road. Although genin are officially considered full-fledged shinobi, I honestly wouldn't call someone who has stuff like painting a wall in their mission roster a proper shinobi. I'm pretty sure that I am not the only one who thinks like that either. While Yuna was idly watching the situation, she noticed that Neji was approaching Hisoka. Apparently, he wanted to have a proper sparring match against her where she could use her full strength without holding back, even if it meant that Neji would lose. After Hisoka heard Neji's request, she let her eyes wander towards Yuna, and after receiving a nod, she quickly accepted Neji's challenge. A few minutes later, all participants and their respective genin were present. A total of 72 Konoha genin will be participating in this time's Chunin exams. Yuna honestly saw no point in sending in this much fodder. Still, since this was a joint exercise, most people probably figured out that the risk will be lower than usual, which would be an incorrect assumption. Additionally, Yuna noticed that a total of 5 members of the Uzumaki clan were participating as well, which she deemed to be an acceptable number. Yuna jumped slightly away from the gathering of shinobi, and as soon as she landed, an ice stage rose from under her feet, elevating her above everybody else. She flared her chakra and noticed, with some dissatisfaction, that some genin actually flinched when her chakra washed over them. If it was her who decided who was allowed to participate, she would kick those people out right now. Instead of that, she glared at the genin who were responsible for those teams, resulting in them awkwardly averting their eyes from Yuna. After making sure that everyone's eyes were on her, she nodded her head and started speaking. As most of you already know, I am Yuna Uzumaki, and I will be the one responsible for this joint exercise that will prepare you for the Chunin exams. Some of you might be wondering why we are doing this inside the Uzumaki compound instead of one of Konoha's numerous training grounds, and the answer to that is relatively simple. Inside the Uzumaki compound, we can ensure that no outsiders can observe the training, which isn't wholly guaranteed at the public ones. Yuna's eyes wandered over the crowd, and she noticed that a few people were interested in snooping around the Uzumaki compound. It was probably only due to curiosity, but Yuna still wouldn't allow them to do so. A vicious smirk appeared on Yuna's face that caused even some jonin to shiver in fear. I recommend not leaving the training ground without permission. If you do, I can no longer guarantee your safety. That was, naturally, just a bluff. Even if someone started wandering around the compound without permission, the worst thing that could happen to that person was getting captured. Despite that, quite a lot of people weren't sure whether Yuna was telling the truth or not, and her vicious expression didn't help calm down their minds either. Yuna continued speaking with a calm expression, as if she didn't just threaten every single person present. Anyway, let's get this started. We will hold a 3vs3 tournament, and, spicing things up a little, we will be breaking apart your current teams and forming new, random ones. You have been learning how to cooperate with your team for at least 6 months now, so now it is time to enter the real world and learn how to collaborate with your teammates even if you don't know them very well. Yuna's words caused a bit of an outrage in the crowd of genin, especially from those few who never participated in Chunin exams. They spent a lot of time training together with their team, and now they were suddenly supposed to fight with 2 people who they might have never met before. They felt like all of their training until now was for nothing if they were to do so. While a few genin were piling up more and more complaints on Yuna, their respective jonin senseis had waterfalls of sweat flowing down their backs, especially when they saw that Yuna still had a kind smile on her face while people were complaining to her. At first, Yuna wanted to wait until the crowd naturally calmed down, but after realizing that a few people interpreted her silence as meekness and were getting bolder, Yuna decided to intervene. Yuna flared her chakra far more intensely than she previously did without any further warning, causing quite a few people to choke on their words. Do you think the Chunin exams are just another academy test? Do you believe that you will get a slap on the wrist if you fail and be told to do better next time? Yuna increased the pressure some more, while the previous vicious smile returned to her face. If I were one of the proctors, then every single person who kept complaining just now would have instantly failed the exams together with their tain. If you think that is unreasonable, you are free to ask your Jonin sensei if others would do the same. The Chunin exams are not about passing a test, they are about showing those that are watching that you are worthy of becoming a Chunin. Depending on your performance, you can become a Chunin despite failing the first test, while it is also possible to stay a Genin despite passing every test. Although the crowd was rather shocked by Yuna's statement, after receiving a confirming nod from their respective Jonin, they all accepted Yuna's words. Yuna was pretty sure that about half of them would forget her words before the day is over, but there was nothing she could do about that. She was just about to finish her speech when she decided to create a little incentive for everyone to take this seriously. Oh right, I almost forgot. Humans tend to work harder when working towards a goal, so let me give you a little incentive to try your best in this little tournament. I will grant each of the individuals in the winning team one reasonable wish. Before an uproar could start due to Yuna's words, massive amounts of battle intent started flooding the training ground, making even most of the Jonin flinch. Everyone instinctively stepped away from the source, and moments later, a young woman with long, red hair and glasses was revealed. She was drilling while her whole face was blushing, but despite that, her eyes shone with insane amounts of greed and determination. Although she was only murmuring to herself, those that stood close to her could still hear a few words she said. Heart tilde, Yuna-sama, rewarder will win, and no matter what a heart tilde. After seeing the culprit responsible for such a powerful battle intent, Yuna could only smile wryly. Oops, I forgot that Karen was here. Chapter 230, The Capable Pervert. Without any more delays, new teams were randomly drawn. Well, considering that Yuna was manipulating the drawing process, so the few people she thought to be the strongest had weak teammates, it wasn't exactly random. A few Jonin noticed that something appeared to be a little off, but considering that Yuna didn't move a finger while the lots were drawn, most of them dismissed it as a weird coincidence. All in all, the matches weren't that interesting to watch. Although Yuna did her best to balance the teams somewhat, she had better things to do than sort through massive amounts of genin and puzzle together teams that were about equal in strength. Luckily, the training ground was sizable enough to hold multiple matches at once, otherwise, the whole ordeal would have taken a lot of time. After just 1 hour, the first set of matches was over, reducing the total amount of teams from 21 to 11. Yuna nodded in satisfaction when she noticed that the 9 people she thought of as the strongest had enough awareness to allow their teammates to have a proper fight before finishing their matches. There seriously would be no point in this if some people instantly get one-shot by people like Neja, after all. On a side note, the 9 people she assumed to be the strongest were Kiranai and Guy's teams, and obviously her own as well. Choji had to fight against Neji in the next set of matches, which didn't end well for Hen. Although Choji cooperated significantly better with his team than Neja did, in the end, that didn't make much of a difference. The next match between people Yuna deemed strong was Tenten vs Sai. Both of them had rather unique fighting styles. Tenten summoned all kinds of weapons and threw them at her opponent, while Sai drew animals, animated them with chakra, and controlled them to attack his enemy. Although it was a good match, in the end, Sai took the win simply due to having more combat experience. His time en route certainly wasn't spent idling around. The next interesting match was Lee versus Hisoka, and Yuna could only facepalm at the outcome. Hisoka's combat style certainly was advantageous against people like Lee, who only used taijutsu, but there was normally no way Hisoka could land a single hit on Lee. The problem? As always, Lee insisted on not taking off his weights, resulting in his loss. Yuna decided that she would need to have a serious conversation with Lee and Guy after this small tournament was over. And the last interesting fight of this round was Karen versus Kiba. Or at least it was supposed to be interesting, but Kiba was very obviously intimidated by Karen's afova. So far, Karen has managed to keep herself under control and allow her two teammates to fight as well, but Yuna was pretty sure that it was just a matter of time before she forgot all about that. Anyway, the next round ended and only 6 teams were left. The first match was drawn, and it turned out to be Karen's team vs the only remaining team that didn't have one of Yuna's favorites. The moment Karen's bloodshot, predator-like eyes landed on them, they unanimously gave up without a moment of hesitation. The next match was Hisoka vs Shino, which was honestly rather bad luck for her. She didn't have anything that could take out Shino's bug swarms, nor had she any powerful jutsu that she could use to bombard Shino with from a distance. Although she had started learning ninjutsu from Yuna, her focus was still on close combat, so she, unfortunately, lost the fight. The last fight in this bracket was Sai vs Neji. Although Sai had the advantage that he didn't need to get too close to Neji due to his drawing, Neji had the advantage that he could dispatch his drawings rather swiftly with his gentle fist style. Recently, Sai managed to create drawings that he could detonate remotely, but unfortunately, Neji could easily spot traps like that with his Byakugan. Although the battle was long and drawn out, in the end, Neji was the victor. Hinata might have folded him together like a newspaper, but that didn't mean that Neji was weak. He was actually rather powerful for a genin. He could easily contest against Chunin, but the problem was that Hinata was significantly stronger than him and knew all his weak points on top of that. And so, it was finally time for the final round. A 3-team battle between Karen, Neji, and Shino's teams. The moment the battle started, the 6 people that were accompanying the trio forfeited instantly. They were under no illusion that they could contribute anything to this match, and they were even reconsidering whether they really should partake in the Chunin exams. If Yuna could hear their thoughts, she would nod in approval. That was part of the reason why she even bothered holding this event after all. She saw no reason why Konoha would even bother to send in people that could barely use the academy jutsu. Neither could she understand why people like that would dare to participate in an event where they could genuinely die if they were too weak. For a brief moment, the image of a young girl with pink hair flashed through Yuna's mind, but she quickly shook her head to get rid of it. Moments later, 2 crimson-red chains burst out of Karen's back and started menacingly swaying behind her, while insects began to burst out of Shino's sleeves and Neji got into the typical gentle fist-style stance. The few members of the Uzumaki clan that were present gaped when they saw Karen use the Uzumaki clan's adamantine chains. They always thought that Yuna kept the perverted Karen around her because she had that kind of preference, but they didn't know that Karen was actually one of the very few Uzumaki that could use the adamantine chains. They immediately saw Karen in a new light when they realized that she actually had that kind of ability, but heart tilde, a heart tilde Unasama's punish me, I mean reward, I needed a heart tilde. That new light was smashed to pieces when they heard Karen murmuring to herself. All of the Uzumaki clan members present thought the same thing at the same time. She may have some abilities, but she is still a pervert, you know. Moments later, the battle started, and Neji was the first to move. He was the only one who was reliant on close combat, so he had to close the gap between him and the other 2 as fast as possible. His first target was Shino, who he deemed as more troublesome than Karen. He had never seen Karen's chakra chains before, and he assumed they were just that, chains that were created out of chakra. Unfortunately, his Byakugan could only see chakra, so it couldn't detect the life force imbued into Karen's chains. Just before Neji could reach Shino, one of Karen's chains appeared in front of him far faster than he expected. Luckily, he had his Byakugan, which barely allowed him to dodge Karen's attack in time, resulting in Karen's chain hitting the ground and smashing a big crater into it. Neji could feel his eyebrows twitch at that destructive power and decided to focus on Karen instead, while Shino did the same. What followed was a rather unusual but balanced battle. Neji and Shino both realized that blocking Karen's chains was not a good option. If it were a 2vs1 fight, then the duo probably would have had a pretty good chance at winning, but unfortunately for them, that was not the case, so they had to constantly be on guard against each other while fending off Karen's attacks. Neji had a huge disadvantage due to only being proficient in close combat, while Shino and Karen used long-range attacks. On the other hand, he had the advantage of being the fastest in the group, so he had the easiest time evading attacks. Shino had the opposite problems. He was the slowest between those three, so it was especially hard for him to dodge Karen's chains, but on the other hand, he had by far the longest range and could keep the other two at a distance. Karen's most significant advantage was the power of her chains, but she made the mistake of aiming for an instant knockout against Neji and failing, which resulted in Neji and Shino paying more attention to her. What tipped the scale over was when Neji finally managed to get in close combat range of Karen. Karen wasn't bad at close combat from what he has seen so far, but she certainly wasn't at his level. Although that assumption was correct, he forgot something rather important. Uzumaki are almost always very proficient in seals. How could Yuna, who towered over every other Uzumaki in that regard, not teach Karen seals? So, the moment Neji was about to attack Karen with his gentle fist style, the ground under him lit up, and Neji lost control over his body just long enough for a third chain to pop out of Karen's back and knock him out. When Shino saw that Neji was knocked out, he gave up as well. He saw no point in losing any more of his insects in a fight he couldn't win. Karen sighed in relief when she heard Shino giving up. She already broke through her limit just now and achieved a third chain. She felt that she could barely control it and that it would collapse at any moment, and if it did, she would receive some backlash from it. Although she could have pushed herself some more and probably could have defeated Shino while on her last breath, she would rather just slowly retract her chains without receiving any damage. The moment all three of her chains disappeared, she staggered a little, but to her surprise, someone caught her before she could fall. Haha, not bad, Karen. Although you shouldn't have exposed your chains so quickly, you easily made up for it with that hidden seal. Very impressive. Although it took Karen a while to realize that Yuna was the one who was holding her steady, the inevitable happened when she did. Blood shot out of her nose like a fountain while she fainted with a blissful smile on her face. After seeing that, the surrounding Uzumaki, who had, yet again, built up Karen's good image due to her valiantly fighting and winning against two powerful opponents, had their image shattered yet again. Very capable, but still a pervert.